Imagine a peaceful summer morning in Sarajevo, where a shot from the hand of a 19-year-old youth changed history forever. On June 28, 1914, the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, Franz Ferdinand, was assassinated by Gavrilo Princip, a member of the Serbian nationalist group. That shot did not just kill one person, it ignited the flames of war that burned all of Europe. World War I, also known as the Great War, lasted from 1914 to 1918, claiming the lives of more than 17 million people, shattering empires, and sowing the seeds for conflicts of the following century. This is not a story about heroes or glorious victories, but a tragedy of humanity, where hope shattered in the mud of the trenches and death became meaningless. As a British soldier later wrote in his diary, "We entered the war with smiles, but left with shattered souls." Early 20th century Europe was a boiling cauldron of nationalism, imperialism, and intricate alliance systems. The Triple Entente, Britain, France, Russia, confronted the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy, though Italy later switched sides. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand was merely the drop that made the cup overflow. In July 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, pulling in Russia, Serbia's ally. Germany, supporting Austria, attacked Russia and France through neutral Belgium, forcing Britain to join the war to protect Belgium. The Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria joined the Central Powers, while Japan and later the United States, Italy, joined the Allies. Initially, everyone believed the war would end quickly, home by Christmas. But the reality was 4 years of hell. From the lush green fields in France to the deserts of the Middle East, from the North Sea to the Pacific, millions of soldiers from the colonies, India, Africa, Australia, were drawn into the vortex. Modern weapons like machine guns, heavy artillery, poison gas turned the battlefield into a slaughterhouse. A French officer recorded, "War is no longer an art, but the science of death." From the Battle of the Marne that saved Paris from German hands in 1914 to the hell of Verdun and Somme in 1916, with millions dead in despair. From the disastrous failure at Gallipoli to the Arab uprising in the Middle East, from the birth of submarines, poison gas tanks, weapons that turned war into something more modern and deadly than ever before. The war led to the Russian Revolution in 1917, overthrowing the Tsar and bringing the Bolsheviks to power. Then the United States entered after German submarines sank passenger ships. Consequences: 17 million people died in the war, plus the Spanish flu pandemic that claimed 50 to 100 million lives worldwide. This was the war that changed the world, leading to the Treaty of Versailles and the seeds for World War II. But the real story begins from the early days of the outbreak, when Europe plunged into a vortex that no one anticipated. From hopes of quick victory to 4 years of prolonged hell, join us to explore what happened in 4 years of bloody fire. Are you ready to face this tragedy? Because history is not just the past. It is a lesson for the future, reminding us of the price of war and the value of peace. Early war, phase 1914, the spread of conflict. In August 1914, Europe sank into chaos as the Central Powers and allies rushed into all-out confrontation. Italy and the United States still maintained neutrality, but Britain quickly dispatched the British Expeditionary Force (BEF) under the command of General John French to support France. Germany, implementing the ambitious Schlieffen Plan, attacked neutral Belgium to avoid the French defensive line. At Liège, German forces broke through the sturdy fortresses with superior artillery firepower, but not without a heavy cost. Belgian civilians were executed en masse, creating a wave of international outrage against Germany, turning the invasion into a symbol of brutality. France responded with Plan 17, a campaign of mass attacks on the German border, but it quickly failed disastrously against German machine gun and artillery fire. The Battle of the Northern Frontiers became a tragedy. France lost 329,000 soldiers, killed, wounded, or missing, while Germany suffered 256,000 casualties. The BEF, though small, clashed with German forces at Mons on August 23rd, forced into an organized retreat, but leaving an imprint of British resilience. A BEF soldier wrote in his diary, "We faced a sea of Germans, but did not retreat easily." The First Battle of the Marne from September 6th to 12th marked the turning point. German forces advanced close to Paris, only 60 kilometers away, but fatigue, lack of supplies, and the decision to withdraw part of the troops to the Eastern Front to counter Russia created a 50-kilometer gap between their First and Second Armies. General von Moltke, the German chief of the General Staff, could not coordinate in time, leading to heavy defeat with 298,000 casualties. The Allies, under the leadership of French General Joffre, seized the opportunity by using Paris taxis to transport troops, pushing back the Germans and saving the capital. Moltke was replaced by Falkenhayn in humiliation, and the Schlieffen Plan officially collapsed. This victory was not the end, but opened the era of trench warfare. Both sides rushed into the race to the sea, trying to envelop the opponent's right flank, leading to the First Battle of Ypres from October 19th to November 22nd. The Allies held Ypres with 129,000 British casualties, while Germany lost 130,000. Gradually fixed defensive lines formed, stretching from the North Sea to the Swiss border. Hundreds of kilometers of muddy terrain and barbed wire. Mobile warfare turned into deadly stalemate where soldiers lived in constant fear. At sea, the war also quickly escalated. In August, the British Navy achieved victory at Heligoland Bight, establishing an effective blockade against Germany, cutting off supplies and exerting economic pressure. But Germany did not sit idle. On September 5th, a U-boat submarine sank HMS Pathfinder, for the first time opening the era of underwater warfare with invisible threats. The seas became a new front, where giant warships confronted phantoms under the ocean. On the Eastern Front, Russia launched an attack into East Prussia, forcing Germany to divert forces. But the Battle of Tannenberg at the end of August was a disaster for Russia. They lost 30,000 killed or wounded, 90,000 captured as prisoners of war. General Samsonov, commander of the Russian Second Army, in desperation committed suicide beside the bodies of his own troops. The First Battle of the Masurian Lakes in early September continued the momentum of defeat with similar casualties, totaling Russia losing nearly 300,000 in 6 weeks. Germany, under the brilliant command of Hindenburg and Ludendorff, turned potential failure into a resounding victory. Austria-Hungary, the weaker allies, suffered heavy defeats against Serbia at the Battle of Sayre and in Galicia from August 23rd to September 11th, losing more than 400,000 compared to Russia's only 950,000 casualties. Russia captured Galicia and besieged the Przemyśl fortress, lasting until March 1915. In October, the Ottoman Empire officially joined the Central Powers side, bombarding Russian ports in the Black Sea, opening the harsh Caucasus front. The war spread to the colonies, turning the conflict global. Germany captured Taveta in Kenya, but quickly lost Togo and initially failed in Cameroon. Japan, Britain's ally, captured Germany's Tsingtao in November. The naval battle of Coronel on November 1st was an unexpected victory for Germany over the British Navy, But just 2 months later, at Falklands, on December 8th, Germany was crushed. Britain captured Basra in Iraq in November to protect strategic oil sources, marking deep intervention into the Middle East. By the end of 1914, the war fell into clear stalemate on all fronts. But on Christmas night, a strange event occurred. In some areas of the Western Front, British and German soldiers stepped out of the trenches, sang carols, exchanged gifts, and even played football. A British soldier wrote, "We forgot the guns and bullets, just men far from home." However, this humane moment was not widespread and was quickly suppressed by commanders. The tragedy of the first year was only the opening for the subsequent hellish years, where initial hope gave way to prolonged horror. Year of stalemate and new weapon trials. 1915, stalemate and challenges. 1915 opened with deep stalemate on the Western Front, where trenches had become living graves for millions of soldiers. From December 1914 to March 1915, the First Battle of Champagne witnessed France's effort to break the German lines, but the result was disaster. France lost 93,000 people, double Germany's 46,000. A brief moment of humanity appeared during Christmas, mainly between British and German soldiers, when they temporarily ceased fire to sing songs and exchange gifts. But this event was not widespread and was quickly extinguished by commanders. In January, Germany expanded the war into the air by using Zeppelin airships to bomb British cities like London, causing civilian panic and marking the extension of war beyond the battlefield. Simultaneously, the German Navy declared unrestricted submarine warfare, allowing attacks on any civilian ships suspected of supporting the Allies, escalating international tensions. In March, the Battle of Neuve-Chapelle saw British forces capture a small portion of territory, but had to pay with 11,000 lives, proving the futility of frontal assaults. The peak of brutality was the Second Battle of Ypres from April to May, when Germany first used chlorine gas as a chemical weapon. Yellow-green gas clouds spread, causing lung burns and blindness, making thousands of Allied soldiers collapse in terrible agony, though in the end, they still held the line. A surviving Canadian soldier wrote, "The gas turned us into ghosts, inhaling death instead of air." On the Eastern Front and Balkans, Russia continued to face heavy defeats. In February, the Second Battle of the Masurian Lakes pushed Russian forces out of East Prussia with heavy casualties, forcing them to retreat in chaos. In March, Austria-Hungary's Przemyśl fortress surrendered after a prolonged siege, handing over more than 100,000 Austrian prisoners to Russia, but this victory was only temporary. From May to July, the Battle of Gorlice-Tarnów, under German-Austrian command, became the turning point. They broke the Russian lines, recaptured Galicia, and caused severe demoralization for the Russian army. By August, Russia was forced to withdraw from Poland, leaving hundreds of thousands of soldiers dead or captured, and Tsar Nicholas II personally took command of the army to try to revive morale, though this only made the situation worse. In the Balkans, Serbia continued to bear pressure, and Bulgaria's entry into the war on the Central Powers side in October pushed Serbia into complete collapse, with the army disintegrating and civilians having to flee through harsh mountains. The Gallipoli campaign represented the Allies' failed ambition in the south. From January 1915, Allied forces, mainly British, French, Australian, and New Zealand, landed on the Gallipoli Peninsula to capture Constantinople and eliminate the Ottomans from the war. However, under the talented leadership of Mustafa Kemal, Ataturk Ottoman forces resisted fiercely, turning the beaches into deadly traps with machine guns and mines. The campaign lasted until January 1916, ending with a safe withdrawal but heavy casualties. Hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers killed or wounded, while the plan to open a route to Russia via the Black Sea shattered. Parallel to that, a horrific humanitarian tragedy occurred. From April 1915 to 1917, the Ottoman Empire carried out the Armenian genocide, deporting and abandoning more than 1 million Armenians in the desert, leading to mass deaths from hunger, thirst, and disease. An Armenian witness recorded, "They led us like sheep to the slaughterhouse, and the world remained silent." Other fronts witnessed new participation and successive failures. In May, Italy joined the Allies' side after being promised territory from the London Pact, opening the Isonzo front with the First Battle of the Isonzo in June, but it ended in stalemated truce. German submarines continued to cause tension by sinking American passenger ships, leading President Wilson to send stern warnings, pushing the U.S. closer to the line of entry into war. From May to November, the second and third battles of Artois caused the Allies to lose 130,000 people compared to Germany's 73,000, while the Second Battle of Champagne from September to November failed disastrously, unable to break the lines. Italy continued attacking Isonzo multiple times, but fell into stalemate with massive casualties. In the Middle East, British forces failed at Ctesiphon in November and were besieged at Kut, where they had to endure hunger and thirst for months. 1915 ended as a forgotten year for the Allies, with depleted resources, declining morale, and no significant advances. A French soldier lamented in his diary, "We fight non-stop, but only to hold the position." No side was ready to propose peace, and the war continued to drag on, leading to the peak bloodiest years ahead. Climax of bloody fire, 1916, Verdun and Somme. 1916 witnessed the most brutal escalation of the war, with battles lasting months and unprecedented human losses. On the Western Front, German General Erich von Falkenhayn launched the Verdun attack from February to December, aiming to grind meat the French army by forcing them to defend continuously at a strategic location. The goal was to exhaust France to the point of surrender, but the plan quickly turned into a nightmare for both sides. German artillery with more than 1,200 guns opened with a horrific bombardment, leveling the forests and hills around. In just the first 2 days, Germany captured Bois de Caux, and by the end of February, they controlled Fort Douaumont, a symbol of French defense, without much initial resistance because France did not anticipate the scale of the attack. General Philippe Pétain was appointed to command French defenses, applying a troop rotation strategy to avoid exhaustion with the slogan, "Ils ne passeront pas," they shall not pass. Germany continued fierce attacks on key positions like Hill 304 and Le Mort, using flamethrowers to burn trenches and phosgene gas to weaken the enemy. The fighting dragged on in mud and fire smoke, with soldiers from both sides dying gradually from disease, starvation, and shell fire. By October, France launched a decisive counteroffensive under the command of General Robert Nivelle, recapturing most lost territory, including Douaumont in October and Vaux in November. Total casualties were horrific. France lost about 365,000 people, killed, wounded, or missing, while Germany suffered 336,000. No side achieved strategic advantage, and Verdun became a symbol of meaningless sacrifice. A surviving German soldier recorded, "Verdun was not a battlefield, but earthly hell where men were crushed like insects." To relieve pressure on Verdun, the Allies opened the Battle of the Somme from July to November, one of the largest attacks in history. Under the command of British General Douglas Haig and French General Ferdinand Foch, Allied forces prepared with a one-week bombardment of more than 1.5 million shells, hoping to destroy German lines. But the first day, July 1st, became a disaster. British troops rushed out of the trenches only to be mowed down by German machine guns, losing 57,000 people, of which 19,000 dead, in just 24 hours, the bloodiest day in British Army history. Units from Newfoundland, Australia, and India also suffered heavy losses, with many regiments completely wiped out. In September, British Mark I tanks were used for the first time at Flers-Courcelette, marking a turning point in mechanized warfare. But they were still crude, prone to breakdown, and not enough to break the stalemate. Fighting continued in floods and mud, with soldiers dying under artillery and machine gun fire. In total, Britain lost 420,000 people, France 200,000, and Germany about 440,000. Though capturing some small territory, the Somme did not achieve the breakthrough goal, only further weakening both sides. A British officer wrote in his diary, "The Somme is a killing machine, where we advance only to witness comrades fall like falling leaves." Other fronts also witnessed major upheavals. On the Eastern Front, Russian General Alexei Brusilov launched the Brusilov Offensive in June, one of Russia's most successful campaigns. They broke Austrian-Hungarian lines, causing Austria to lose more than 700,000 people, killed, wounded, or captured. But Russia also paid with about 1 million casualties, severely weakening the Russian army and contributing to later internal crises. In August, Romania joined the Allies, hoping to gain territory from Austria-Hungary, but was quickly counterattacked by Germany and Austria-Hungary, leading to disastrous defeat and the loss of Bucharest by year's end. In the Middle East, the Arab revolt under the leadership of Sharif Hussein began in June, with support from T.E. Lawrence of Britain, leading to the capture of Mecca and other cities from the Ottomans, expanding desert warfare. On the Italian front, Austria-Hungary launched the Battle of Asiago in May to knock Italy out of the war, but Italy resisted and counterattacked, though both sides fell into stalemate with high casualties. In April, British forces at Kut finally surrendered to the Ottomans after a prolonged siege, with more than 13,000 prisoners, marking a major failure in Mesopotamia. 1916 ended with complete exhaustion for both sides, leading to leadership changes. Falkenhayn was replaced by Hindenburg in Germany, while Britain and France restructured command. But the war did not stop, continuing to entail profound political and social changes. A Russian soldier complained, "We won battles, but lost our souls." This bloodiest year was only the climax, leading to revolutions and new interventions ahead. Revolution and U.S. entry into war. 1917, internal collapse. 1917 marked the internal collapse in many countries, with revolutions and alliance changes shaking the war landscape. In Russia, food shortages, military failures, and public discontent led to the February Revolution in March, when strikes and protests in Petrograd spread into riots. Tsar Nicholas II was forced to abdicate, ending the Romanov dynasty after more than 300 years. A provisional government was established under the leadership of Alexander Kerensky, a socialist politician committing to continue the war on the Allies' side to maintain international prestige and receive aid from Britain and France. However, the morale of the Russian army was exhausted, with millions of soldiers deserting and mutinying. In July, Kerensky ordered the Kerensky Offensive to regain momentum on the Eastern Front, but the plan failed disastrously due to lack of coordination and strong resistance from the Central Powers, leading to hundreds of thousands more losses and weakening the government. By October, the Bolshevik Party under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin and Leon Trotsky carried out a successful coup overthrowing Kerensky in the October Revolution. The new Soviet government prioritized peace signing the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany in March 1918, officially withdrawing Russia from the war. Russia had to cede vast territories like Poland, Ukraine, and the Baltic countries, but this allowed the Bolsheviks to consolidate internal power. A Russian soldier reflected in his diary, "We fought for the Tsar then for Kerensky, but now we just want to go home and end this nightmare." Russia's withdrawal opened opportunities for the Central Powers, but also led to the entry of a new force, the United States. From January 1917, Germany resumed unrestricted submarine warfare, sinking many American cargo and passenger ships, including ships like Housatonic and California, violating previous commitments. The climax was the Zimmermann telegram in January, intercepted by British intelligence revealing Germany proposing an alliance with Mexico against the U.S. to regain lost territories in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. This incident ignited American public opinion, which was already outraged by sinkings like the Lusitania in 1915. President Woodrow Wilson, initially neutral, called on Congress to declare war on April 2nd, and the U.S. officially entered the war on the Allies' side on April 6th. Wilson emphasized this as the war to end all wars, with goals of democracy and national self-determination. U.S. forces under the command of General John Pershing began landing in Europe, bringing fresh forces and vast industrial resources, though it took time to train and deploy. On the Western Front, 1917 continued the chain of failures for the Allies. In April, the Battle of Arras, led by Britain to support France, initially captured some positions, but quickly bogged down with heavy casualties. Britain lost more than 150,000 people in 6 weeks. Paralleling this, French General Robert Nivelle launched the Nivelle Offensive from April to May on the Aisne River, promising a decisive breakthrough, but failed due to poor intelligence and solid German defenses, leading to 187,000 French soldiers lost in just 2 weeks. The result was a wave of mutinies in the French army, with dozens of divisions refusing attack orders, demanding improved living conditions and an end to the war. Pétain was appointed to suppress it, using a combination of strict discipline and reforms like regular leave. From July to November, the Battle of Passchendaele, also known as the Third Battle of Ypres, under Haig's command, turned into muddy hell due to heavy rain, with soldiers drowning in shell craters. The Allies captured Passchendaele village, but had to pay with about 245,000 people, while Germany lost an equivalent 200,000. In November, the Battle of Cambrai witnessed the first large-scale use of tanks, more than 400 by Britain, initially successful, but quickly repelled by German counterattacks, leading to continued stalemate. Other fronts witnessed significant changes. In October, Italian forces suffered a disastrous defeat at Caporetto due to German-Austrian attacks, losing more than 300,000 people and vast territory, forcing a retreat to the Piave River and receiving Allied support. In the Middle East, British forces under General Edmund Allenby won big at Gaza in March-April, then captured Jerusalem in December, marking strategic progress against the Ottomans and igniting hope for the Zionist movement. In June, Greece, under Prime Minister Eleftherios Venizelos, entered the war on the Allies' side after a coup expanding the Balkans. In the air, dogfights became widespread, with planes like Sopwith Camel and Fokker turning the sky into a deadly arena under pilots like Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron. 1917 ended with Russia withdrawing, freeing German troops for the Western Front, while the U.S. began participating, bringing new hope. But Germany still had hope with the upcoming spring offensive. A newly arrived American soldier wrote, "We came to save Europe, but will we save ourselves from this hell?" End in legacy. 1918, Spring Offensive and Armistice. 1918 opened with Germany's last hope to achieve victory before American power overwhelmed them. With Russia having withdrawn from the war, Germany transferred hundreds of thousands of troops from the Eastern Front to the West, concentrating on a series of campaigns called the Spring Offensive. The Michael Offensive, starting on March 21st, was the greatest effort. More than 60 German divisions advanced along the Somme River, pushing Allied forces back 60 kilometers, advancing closer to Paris than at any time since 1914. Using stormtrooper tactics, elite units attacking rapidly combined with artillery bombardment and poison gas, Germany inflicted heavy casualties but had to pay with its own exhaustion. Subsequent campaigns like Georgette in April and Blücher York in May continued to threaten the Allies, with Paris once again within German artillery range. However, German forces faced serious logistical problems, lack of food equipment, and declining morale due to 4 years of non-stop war. U.S. troops under the command of General John Pershing began playing an important role, especially at the Battle of Château-Thierry in June, where they helped stop the German advance. In total, the Spring Offensive caused Germany to lose 688,000 people, killed, wounded, or missing, while the Allies suffered equivalent but held the line thanks to the increasingly numerous U.S. forces. A German soldier wrote in his diary, "We went too far only to see victory slip from our hands." In August, the Allies shifted from defense to counter-offensive with the Battle of Amiens, coordinated by Britain, France, Australia, and Canada. More than 400 tanks, thousands of aircraft, and tight coordination pushed German forces back dozens of kilometers. August 8th, called by German General Erich Ludendorff the Black Day of the German Army, marked the collapse of Central Powers' morale. Subsequent Allied campaigns from Meuse-Argonne to Canal du Nord exploited superior numbers and abundant supplies from the U.S., breaking the Hindenburg Line, Germany's last steel wall. Meanwhile, Germany's allies began to collapse. Bulgaria signed an armistice on September 29th, overwhelmed by Serbian and Allied forces in the Balkans. The Ottoman Empire surrendered on October 30th after successive defeats in Palestine and Syria, with Damascus and Aleppo falling into the hands of British and Arab forces. Austria-Hungary, disintegrating from within due to ethnic unrest, was defeated by Italian forces at the Battle of Vittorio Veneto in October, leading to an armistice on November 3rd and the complete collapse of the empire. An Italian officer recorded, "We didn't just defeat the army, but an entire empire." Germany was now alone, facing internal crisis. Mutinies broke out in Kiel and Berlin as sailors and workers refused to continue fighting. Kaiser Wilhelm II, losing the support of the army, and people abdicated on November 9th and fled to the Netherlands. On November 11, 1918, in a train car in the Compiègne forest, the German delegation signed the armistice agreement, ending hostilities at 11 a.m. that day. But the final tragedy still occurred. Henry Gunther, a German-American soldier, was shot dead just 1 minute before the armistice hour, becoming the last to fall in the war. A French soldier wrote, "Silence came after the gunfire, but it could not erase the pain in our hearts." The consequences of the war were immeasurable. About 17 million people, military and civilian, had died, with tens of millions wounded or lost their homes. The German, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian empires collapsed, leaving a divided and chaotic Europe. The Spanish flu pandemic, spreading from crowded military camps, claimed 50 to 100 million lives from 1918 to 1920, far exceeding the number of war dead. The 1919 Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh terms on Germany: territorial reductions, massive war, reparations, and military limitations. President Wilson proposed the 14 points to establish lasting peace, including the establishment of the League of Nations, but the conflicts from the treaty sowed seeds for future conflicts. Germany humiliated nurtured resentment, leading to World War II just 2 decades later. A British journalist commented, "Versailles did not bring peace, but only a temporary armistice." The war left a complex legacy: the birth of new nations like Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, global power shifts, with the U.S. emerging as a superpower, and new awareness of the cost of modern war. But the lesson of peace has not yet been fully understood. A British veteran wrote, "We survived, but what we witnessed will haunt us forever." World War I, expected to be the war to end all wars, turned out to be only the opening step for greater tragedies. World War I, a tragic chapter in human history, has closed, but left scars that never heal. From 1914 to 1918, it destroyed mighty empires, shook societies, and reshaped the world map. More than 17 million people, soldiers, civilians from the fields of Flanders to the deserts of Mesopotamia, fell carrying the dreams and hopes of an entire generation. The survivors returned, bearing physical and mental pain, with millions wounded homeless or living in the trauma of trenches, poison gas, and artillery fire. This war was not just a story of battles, but a lesson about the fragility of peace and the terrible price of conflict. A Canadian veteran wrote in his memoirs, "We fought to protect our homeland, but what we truly lost was ourselves." The legacy of the war extends far beyond statistics. It marked the collapse of ancient empires: German, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and even Tsarist Russia, giving way to new nations like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. But this restructuring did not bring stability. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, set harsh conditions on the defeated nations, especially Germany, with territorial losses, military limitations, and massive reparations. These terms nurtured discontent, creating conditions for extremist movements to rise, which later led to an even more devastating war. President Wilson's 14 points idea, with a vision of national self-determination and peace through the League of Nations, was expected to prevent future conflicts. However, divisions among the Allied powers, along with the U.S. refusal to join the League of Nations, made the dream of lasting peace distant. A French historian remarked, "We won, but what we planted were the seeds of a new war." The Spanish flu pandemic, breaking out in 1918 from the war's dire conditions, spread worldwide, claiming the lives of tens of millions of people, more than the number killed in combat. It reminded humanity that war kills not only with bullets, but also with lingering, invisible consequences afterward. The war also marked a shift in global power. The U.S. emerged as an economic and military superpower, while exhausted Europe struggled to rebuild. Modern war technology, from machine guns, tanks, to aircraft, changed the way humans confront each other, but at the same time deepened awareness of the brutality of mechanized conflict. This war teaches us that peace does not come naturally. It requires understanding, cooperation, and commitment not to let history repeat. The stories of the soldiers, from blood-drenched diary lines to dreams crushed by war, are reminders of the price of hatred and division. An English mother who lost all 3 sons in the war wrote, "If my pain could save the world from war, I would endure it again." Learn from history, not just to understand the past, but to build a future where children do not grow up amid cannon fire. We invite you to reflect on these lessons, share the story of World War I, and together commit to peace. Thank you for accompanying us through 4 years of bloody fire to look back and toward a better world. To explore more captivating historical journeys, subscribe to our channel right today. Each video is a door opening to the past, helping you understand the world more deeply and build a peaceful future. Press the subscribe button, turn on notification bells to not miss new content. Share with friends together, spread the value of history. Subscribe now, because the past is a lesson and the future is our responsibility.